Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am.
Welcome to the third session of day one of STTP, AICT sponsored 1 week on AI and machine learning with data science. Our expert for third session is Dr. Jitendra Kumar Chhabra. He is professor, Department of Computer Science, and he has been always topper throughout his career. He did his BTech as well as MTech from NIT Kurukshetra as gold medalist. He has more than 26 years of teaching and research experience. He is author of 3 books and he has filed 5 patents. One of his patent has been published and one copyright for software has been granted to him as intellectual property rights. He has successfully completed a research project by DRDO, Government of India, in the area of secure storage. He is reviewer of IEEE transactions, ACM transactions, Elsevier, Springer, Willey, Taylor, and Francis, InterScience, and many more other journals. He has published more than 125 papers in reputed international and national journals and conferences, including more than 50 publications from IEEE, ACM, Elsevier, and Springer, which are SCI and Scopus indexed. He has organized 3 international conferences, conducted 12 workshops, and delivered more than 50 expert talks in IITs, NITs, and other reputed institutes of the country. He has guided 5 PhD scholars, and one of his guided PhD thesis has been selected as a research material by ACM USA in the area of software engineering. He has visited many countries and presented his research work in USA, UK, Canada, Spain, France, Austria, Singapore, Turkey, UAE, and Thailand. He has worked in collaboration with multinational IT companies like HP and TCS in the area of software engineering and is privileged to be invited as judge for IBM national contest. One of his guided project was selected in top 20 projects of the world in the most reputed score 2011 contest organized by IEEE. He has also guided his team to get selected for most prestigious ACM International Programming Contest since last 10 years consecutively, and one of his team was ranked among top 5 teams of Asia region contest. He has also contributed significantly in the administration as nodal officer, ex-HOD of Computer Department, IT, VLSI, and MCA. He is recipient of Best Teacher Founder Award of NIT Kurukshetra. In addition, he has been awarded with many recognitions like Sir Isaac Newton Scientific Award, Best Educator Award, All India Open Debate Winner, Best Project Award, Best Presentation Award, Bharat Vikas Award, Outstanding Educational Achievement, International Professional and Scientist, 21st Century Award for the Achievement, Cambridge Blue Book Achievement, Outstanding Intellectual of 21st Century, etc. In 2018-19, he was declared National Badminton Champion in NIT tournament in singles as well as doubles. His area of interest are software engineering, clustering, soft computing, object-oriented system, and AI. We welcome you, sir. And sir, for your information, the audience or participants are all over the country from different states, and there are a few students of our department also who are joining, and they all are in the interest of AI, machine learning, and data science. Thank you very much, sir. Over to you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you very much. Very good afternoon to all participants and organizers. It's a real pleasure to be part of this STTP. Special thanks are due to Dr. Kiran Jyoti, HOD of IT, and Dr. Sandeep Singla, the coordinator of this, and all other organizing team. In this COVID-19 situation and lockdown situation, it's really tough to keep people motivated and still keep the learning going on. So online learning is a good platform, but it has its own issues. So credit goes to Dr. Kiran and her team for planning such a good, useful activity for the benefit of the students as well as the other participants from all over India. With online, there being so many disadvantages, but one advantage also comes that people sitting in faraway places, those who cannot travel, now they can also attend such FDPs or STTPs. And the boundaries of the state and the distance limitations get overcome by such kind of an online mode. At the same time, it makes all of us to be more sincere and motivated from our own part also, so that we are really willing to work as well as to learn from such a mode also. So with this, thank you very much, ma'am. And I'm going to start my presentation and discussion. Before that, I'll just request all participants that feel free, if you have any queries, you are welcome to ask me. You can unmute yourself and then interrupt me. I don't discourage people. I rather encourage that you can interrupt me in between. Don't delay your questions. If you have any queries, please feel free to ask me. And I'll not be able to see the chat group. So those who have some issues or those who want to ask questions, they may also put their question on the chat box, and organizers team can probably look at that, and then they can unmute themselves, and then they can also interrupt me in between and ask. So either the participant can unmute himself or herself directly, or they can put the question in the chat box, and time to time the organizers can please interrupt me and ask me the questions. With this, I think now we can start with the theme of our STTP, and let me start my presentation. So I'll just take few seconds to start the share my screen, and through that I'll just enable the sharing. I hope my screen becomes visible, and uh, I'll request the organizers or someone to unmute and please confirm that the screen is visible to them.
Yes, sir, screen is visible.
Great, thank you. So I hope my voice is also clear and there is no disturbance. Great. So very good afternoon formally to all participants from all over India. Well, as per the theme, the discussion of my presentation today for this duration is adding intelligence to engineering systems. I'm hopeful, or I think that most of you are from the computer engineering or electronics or IT, and maybe some other relevant electrical, etc. So I have tried to discuss the things which are relevant to almost all kind of engineerings, with slightly giving the technical inputs and then slowly taking it towards slight research orientation contents as well. Wherever you feel difficulty, please feel free to ask your questions. Well, I start with one slide where I'm sure all of you can see this and probably you can recognize. Maybe some of you can put your answer on the chat box, and or you can unmute, but I'm sure many of you must have recognized it. It's nothing but it's the Rafale. All of you are probably well aware. Recently, 5 Rafales have been added and few more are likely to come this month itself. So India is going to be quite powerful in the air defense system. Just let's have a look on the Rafale, and then I'll talk of something and correlate with what we are going to see today. So some of you might not be getting the voice, although my audio has, video also has this, but you can see it's a Rafale.
Excuse me, sir. Jitendra, sir. Hello.
Yeah, ma'am. Yeah,
Sir, voice of video is not
not coming.
audible.
Yeah, I could understand that's normally the problem. Voice could not have been visible, audible. So I'm going to explain what we just saw, but still the video itself gives you enough information what we are going to look at. Although had there been audio, I'm sure all of you must have enjoyed it more. But if you see what an intelligent air defense system and this fighter plane is, primarily, as it already said, that it has got three kind of components which we could see: sky shield, light shield, and X guards. Just when we see at the start of this, sky shield was one of the control system and shielding system which was able to deceive the electronic warfare and support jamming system. And we were able to have our Rafale not being totally detected by their radar system or their jamming system. And first thing which this provided, subsequently, multiple defense control systems and multiple pilot planes also could make a combined protection for formation. Multiple of Rafales could integrate themselves in a particular team manner, and then subsequently that formation might get detected by the anti-theft system or anti-control system of the enemy, but light shield will be able to support and escort that jamming, and still they will be able to interact. The communication system among Rafales will not get disturbed at all because of the light shield system. And third part of the discussion or of this video was effectively talking of an X-guard system where the enemy was being deceived, because ultimately enemy will also have some kind of detection system of such Rafales, etc. And when the target is being there, their missile system or controlling system could try to shoot their missiles, etc., to the Rafale and this formation system. But X-guard system will lure them, off track them, and that will be making sure that our particular attacking system goes uncontrolled, off tracked, and enemy is not able to create any issues for all of us. What an intelligent system Rafale had. What better than intelligent engineering system Rafale could have? What we could see Rafale being one of the fantastic amalgamation of engineering, having, of course, the aeronautical engineering, electrical engineering, electronics engineering, communication systems, sensors and instrumentation networks, computer engineering, and many more like that. Along with that, lot of physics and corresponding material science also coming into picture. Integration of all such technologies with one of the fantastic intelligent machine behaving like the best possible attacking system. We are proud to have such kind of systems, but beyond that, there is a lot of engineering and technology coming. What is really happening? The kind of a Rafale over with that there could be a spice bombing system which provides a support of drop and forget option. Effectively meaning that you have to just find out the target and drop your bomb to that particular target and forget about that. Rest everything will be by that intelligent dropping and control system. Works in all weather, all lighting conditions. Electro-optical with high precision is there. And the best part being the relocatable targets are also achievable. Once you have dropped the bomb and the target gets relocated, the bomb will be able to readjust itself. Just imagine what kind of engineering has been added to that dropping system itself. Up to 100 different targets could be loaded directly, and their image processing and geographical coordinates will be sufficient for this. So you identify multiple targets, aim to fix up the time and the duration by which they want to be targeted or attacked, drop the bombs, and multiple targets will be achieved. And all that happening with intelligent image matching algorithm. The target image was already into the memory. The bomb has been dropped, and bomb will automatically find out its target, and using the coordinates as well as image processing, it will readjust also if needed. Dynamic routing will take place, smart GPS will take place, inertial navigation system, lot of big words, lot of big intelligence. Without going into much of these details, you can just see that what kind of a complex system, but still what kind of an accurate, precise, and intelligent system it is. So what else do we need to talk for such intelligent system? What can be a better product than this to discuss intelligence and intelligent systems in engineering? This kind of an intelligent system is actually a network of multiple systems, as the formation by multiple Rafaels was possible. The precision being with help of 99.999%, deception of the enemy, automated target identification, readjustment and relocation of the bombs, etc. And in case, even if there is no GPS, inertial navigation system will take care of all that. Self-learning, automation, adaptation, and all that happening in a fraction of seconds. Imagine how fast the computation is, how accurate the sensing is, and how comfortable and precise the image processing is. Yes, dear friends, when you talk of such things, what else do you need to make an intelligent system? Intelligence coming from various angles, we will see how we are getting all that. So once we see all such kind of a systems, imagine where we are leading to. It's not that just we have achieved Rafael and similar other systems. Things are going to be really, really more intelligent in the future. In future, the information and communication technology is going to see a tremendous growth. The future, we are going to see interdisciplinary applications and a highly complex applications. Social networking like Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and WhatsApp have opened totally new dimensions of use of ICT, and there are advantages as well as disadvantages of the same. But whether we like or not, this is going to grow probably in an uncontrolled manner over a social network. And we need to effectively find out the useful and meaningful information out of huge source of unstructured big data. Once the data becomes really big, it becomes a gigabytes and petabytes and so and so. In that case, the processing of that is going to be really, really a big challenge, and processing in real time is going to be difficult. It is normally said that the amount of data which was being produced 20 years back is lesser than the amount of data being produced in a single day now in the 2020. When such a big data comes, it is having a lot of external signals and lot of external noise. Noise needs to be removed. Meaningful data and signal need to be extracted. The dimensionality of the data is increasing. Earlier, we could say, okay, we have only temperature, we have only the weather prediction based on few significant information. But now the data is really high dimensional. 10-dimensional, 20-dimensional, 100-dimensional, 1,000-dimensional, and maybe more than that. So we have the data to be millions of rows with tens of thousands of columns. And out of that, reduction of the data will be always needed. Hence, all such things keep us towards application-specific domains, and future requires more of computing and intelligence to be added with various tools. Why all this is happening is primarily because of three reasons. One, there is no more differentiation between computing and communication. Earlier, people used to have a fight that computer engineering is better or electronics engineering is better. Communication is more powerful or computing is more powerful. Now, if you talk of a mobile, will you call it as a communication device? Probably incorrect. Will you call it as a computing device? Again, incorrect. If you see, mobile is the best integration of both technologies. It has an operating system, it has a processor, it has a networking, it has a communication, it has all no more analog discussions, analog communication, analog devices effectively not coming into picture. We are going into the digital era, and everywhere networking devices, sensors, IoT, instrumentation, all coming together. So we are talking of every sensor coming everywhere. Imagine an automobile system. Nowadays, you go for the cars corresponding, any fault is there, and you go to the company, and the service of the car will require more of sensors-based identification. No specialization extra needed except identifying the sensors, and via that the problem will be identified. You might be not believing, but some good cars of the world have thousands of sensors, not even hundreds of sensors. So that's the complexity by which ICT is growing to. Future systems, we are going to see mobility, autonomy, and distributive systems. We are going to see systems of systems and networks of networks. All these things are deterministic. Probably well-defined algorithms for these exist and they can work. But there are going to be some other scenarios where intelligence will come into picture. And intelligence effectively means there are no well-defined deterministic algorithms. There cannot be exact processing for that, and there is some kind of intelligence. Obviously, the question will come, what is intelligence? How do we define intelligence? We'll have a look. But synchronization among all these systems will be possible only via intelligence. We need to have certain hybrid, dynamic, and evolving architectures. Now gone is the time when simple computer architecture will work, when simple control system architecture will work. It's an integration, it's a hybrid system, and it's an evolving system. So it cannot remain a static architecture, and soft computing like fuzzy logic, neural networks, genetic algorithms, swarm intelligence can play a lot of role. Finally, the system is really complex and adaptive behavior is a must. It will be not possible without having proper soft computing. So all these parts become part of intelligence, and intelligence is although probably more than all these things. So what is intelligence? What is there as intelligence providing is mainly we need the software support to add intelligence to the machines. Hardware provides a lot of speed. Hardware is quite cheaper now. Lot of sensors and computing power available with the various processors, but software becomes a bottleneck. Intelligent software even becomes a challenge. But we are well aware of Google Maps' success and see what intelligently Google Map can behave. But still, it's not the perfect system. So what intelligence means? Intelligence is a very general mental ability, but it has a lot of dimensions of the problem. Ability of the reason, that is reasoning, is one part of intelligence. Planning, problem solving, thinking, comprehension, complex ideas, learning from experience, learning without experience, learning of its own, learning from others' mistake, all that becomes intelligence. You can see some of these things machine learning could give, some of these things machine learning might not give, some other things could come from some other aspects. So intelligence needs a lot of support of AI, machine learning, data processing, and soft computing. So what is intelligence? Intelligence means, first, we should be able to interpret, not just process. First thing, comprehend the relations between objects, comprehension, not just establishing. Applying the information for the new conditions. As a human being, we intelligently behave. We learn something in one environment and apply that knowledge in other environments using that knowledge acquired without much of a difficulty. Very easily, most of us do. We teach a child how to walk, and the child easily starts running subsequently and without much of a difficulty. We learn one thing and we apply the knowledge other side. We want the machine also to do that. We want to learn from the mistakes. If as a driver, I have seen an accident happening because of a mistake of another driver, I need not repeat that mistake. I can easily learn from the other's mistake, and I'll not probably have the same mistake as a driver done. I want a machine also to learn from the mistake of other machines also. I want to work intuitively with a partial knowledge. Many times we say, my sixth sense told me that I would like to go for this decision. Without any background, without any knowledge, still, or with partial knowledge, we take some of the best decisions, some of the best possible intuitive knowledge comes there. We want our machine to have that. May not be possible presently, but God knows in future all this might happen, as 30 years back, nobody could imagine that such intelligent computer device or computers will be available, which will be doing all this. Yeah, any queries? If there are, welcome, please. Okay, fine. So if there are no queries, maybe we can continue in between. If there are any questions, you are welcome to ask. Well, machine learning is a buzzword nowadays. We feel that probably it's an answer to most of the things, but probably not. May not be that everything is not through machine learning. We need all other things also. So primarily, intelligence requires mainly 3 or 4 kinds of a processing. Hard computing, where intelligence will come via modeling and analysis. Well, modeling and analysis could be possible for small and problems having lesser size. But when the data grows enormously, when it becomes a big data, or when the dimensions increase, hard computing fails, because the exponential growth of the total problem size will lead to exponential time requirements, and no computing device will be able to do that. Hence comes soft computing, where inexact methods are used to give inexact but still useful answers. The answer might not be 100% accurate, answer might not be the best solution, but one of the good answers, one of the best answers is what we plan via soft computing. This has given a significant shift from the normal processing to the human mind processing, and where real models are needed and they are not available, those problems can be solved using fuzzy logic, neural networks, and so on. Machine learning, on the contrary side, is slightly different than soft computing processing. And here, what we look at is automating the automation. Machine learning is different than normal computing because here we don't talk of algorithms. We want the computers to program themselves. We want the computers to learn the algorithms. We don't define the algorithms, which other things need. And finally comes Optimization, where we need to minimize or maximize the desired parameters using single or multi objectives. Like Google Maps normally will give you the optimized result, which takes shortest time. The time will be minimized. But if you want the distance to be minimized, maybe you can have an alternate algorithm. If you want the efficiency or fuel efficiency to be the best, maybe you can have another alternate algorithm, and you can probably choose now, and Google Maps will give you all that. Not only that, if you are on a two-wheeler, you might get a different path proposed. If you are on a four-wheeler, you might get a different path proposed. If you are walking, you might get another path. If you want a public conveyance, you can get another path. All such things effectively are nothing but optimizational problems. So effectively, intelligence via software will come, where what we need ultimately, the software is to generalize using the experimental data. The key part of all intelligence will be some data will be needed. Experimental data will be used to identify some generalized steps. And that's where intelligence comes. Soft computing techniques will effectively use the concept of approximation and interpolation and do this generalization. And with high dimensionality space, this is going to be really very useful as well as challenging. But in all these cases, as we can always feel that availability of the data is a precondition, pre-processing has to be done, filtering of the noise will be must, and which technique to be used. Some of the times deep learning mode could be useful. Sometimes a fuzzy logic could be useful. Sometimes a neural networks needed. Sometimes swarm intelligence needed. We have to identify which one we need, which data we need, which technique we need. So there are three aspects. We are going to see all these three aspects, but they are interrelated in some sense, and combinedly they provide intelligent computing and intelligent systems. Going one by one, soft computing is going to model the cognitive behavior, and this is the first foundation step of conceptual intelligence. Long back, when artificial intelligence area was established in 1980s, it had failed miserably. People never thought that we will be able to add intelligence to the machine, and area started dying. Slowly, in the early decade of 2000, then we started seeing soft computing like fuzzy logic and neural network picking up. Washing machines coming up with fuzzy logic, and some applications started, and suddenly artificial intelligence started coming up. Development of some of the IBM models and some other companies, they led to some intelligent machines, and now we are talking of driverless cars. We are talking of Mars mission. We are talking of even our Mars mission going without any human being. We plan to go to moon, and all that happening through intelligent robots being a reality. Amazon, Alexa, Google, Smart playing, all those things. And then we have virtual reality, augmented reality, all coming in a big manner. But all these require tolerance of imprecision, uncertainty, partial truth, and approximation. How to handle these? We have the soft computing, a comparison with this. So hard computing, for our normal algorithms like factorial or quadratic equation roots, some mathematical processing, matrix addition, multiplication, we do a lot of things. But soft computing will provide me imprecision tolerance. It will be able to solve in lesser time. Computational time can be reduced. Partial truth can be used. We need not have every complete detailed data. Imprecision will be possible. Best solution might not be there, but with the low cost, near best, approximate solution will be possible. So situations where I need the best solution, soft computing is not useful. Where I need the solution to be highly precise, soft computing may not be the answer. But if I want an intelligent behavior, the best is not always best. and not possible. Hence, intelligence means choosing best out of available within a reasonable time. Everything matters. Soft computing primarily consists of three things: fuzzy logic, evolutionary computation, and neural networks. Under evolutionary, genetic, swarm intelligence, and many more which are present nowadays. Well, coming to which one of these to be used at what stage, so that in future those students or those researchers or teachers who want to use these techniques for their domain specific applications or for their research, they should know which one to use at what stage. Fuzzy logic will be useful to handle imprecision. If you want approximate reasoning, the fuzzy logic is best. If you want to compute with linguistic expressions, it is the best. Like I say, if a temperature is high, if the cough is more, and if there is going to be shivering, probably you need to take a high dose of paracetamol. Now, that itself speaks of what knowledge and what processing needed. I need not state here that if the temperature is 102.1, if the shivering is 73%, if the body ache or if the cough is 45%, then give 360 ml of paracetamol. No, I need not say that. So I can handle with the linguistic expressions like high, low, approximations, imprecision, still get the answer, and like that. Washing machine, automatic washing machine. I just say if the clothes are very dirty, if the number of clothes are more, if the total time needed is higher, then I should set my machine automatically to this situation. If I want the faster result, if the clothes are smart, if the clothes are less dirty, if the clothes are soft, if I have a woolen clothes, or if I have time restrictions, then the washing machine will adjust to a different scenario. All these words are very imprecise. Still, fuzzy logic has the answer. On the other hand, neural network effectively works with neurons' behavior. The way our human mind has thousands, millions of neurons, not thousand, millions of neurons, and there are a lot of interconnectivity which nobody knows in what way they are complexly connected, still they process. The neural networks tries to simulate that behavior. But obviously it requires a lot of data processing powers, computational power. Also, it requires a lot of data to train and then to validate. Mathematical modeling has to be understood in a longer run if you want to apply neural networks for your real processing. And rigorous training will be the only solution for neural networks to work. So if you have got good sufficient data available in a big way and good computational power, only then you will be able to use the neural network, and you should have some understanding of mathematical modeling, and then neural network will become choice. If you don't have such background, maybe neural network is not suitable for your situation or for yourself. Comparing the two, which are very commonly used, fuzzy logic will be able to handle the semantic also, where qualitative domain knowledge will be possible. Qualitative, where I say good, bad, very good, excellent, best, poor, average, linguistic variables, dynamic systems. Neural network, where we will have a lot of signal processing elements, parallel processing being available, network structure needed, connection weights needed, and mathematically their processing to be done at the back ends. So I need to have a structure of networks of neurons and cross connections with various weights, and then weights need to be trained and weights need to be modified. So the two are entirely different from each other, and we have to find which one to use at what stage. On the third side, evolutionary computing, it goes in a different manner, and this is the theory of survival of the fittest. We say that probably we had our forefathers in form of a monkey, but now we walk on two legs, we don't have a tail, and probably we say that the tail has gone. Because tail was not needed, tail was unfit, and we could survive. We say the dinosaurs have gone. Why? Because the dinosaurs could not fit into the system, and small creatures ultimately survived. So the Darwin's theory of survival of the fittest is the behind main concept of evolutionary computing, where we try to find various solution or populations, various controls, and we make different kind of genes, and those chromosomes we try to find whether they fit into the current solution space or not. Those chromosomes which are closer to better solutions, they are considered to survive, and those who are not so good, they are considered to die. Hence, accordingly, the system takes care of making lots of chromosomes, lot of genetic solutions, and those solutions take space over full all possible search space, and then some of those optimal or better fit survive to the next generation, and slowly with each new generation solutions improve, and finally we'll get some optimized solutions. So whenever we need some optimization to be applied, genetic and swarm intelligence are one of the good ways to apply optimization. So those engineering problems which require optimization and which require approximation based or less data based in optimization in a reasonable time without exponential time availability, then genetic or swarm intelligence can be a good way. PSO, ACO, ABC, BBO, and like that, frog algorithms, CSA, crow search algorithm, many are available, and all of them are optimizational techniques. When to use this? Primarily, first requirement is the search space has to be very big. If you have multi-dimensional space and the space range is quite big, finding the best solution will require months of computation if deterministic algo is applied. Mathematically optimization algorithms like simplex algorithm, dual M algorithm, or many more like that, they will take months of processing to get the solution for a bigger search space. But GA and swarm intelligence will do approximate reasoning, some intelligent processing, and you will be able to find the faster solutions, near best solutions. One of the best solutions may not be the best optimal, but near optimal solutions. And exponential problems will be solved via this in a good manner, because deterministic solutions will be very slow. But of course, the solution will be one of the optimals, near optimal, not possibly the best. Ultimately, it requires two kind of things in all such algos. Those who work or those who plan to work, they must know how to ensure good exploitation, how to ensure good exploration. And a balance between the two will be needed. Some stage, more of exploration will be needed. Lower stages, more of exploitation will be needed. So slowly the concentration must be shifting also, and overall local search space as well as global search space must be attempted. For students, these words or terminology might not be much clear. Nothing to worry. When you work in this area and start applying these solutions somewhere, slowly you will learn. Those who are faculty or some engineers or using these techniques, they might be aware, but they might not have given due attention to this. Don't use these algorithms as a black box. You must be aware what are the strengths and weaknesses of each of these and how to improve exploitation or exploration for the corresponding algorithms. Ultimately, when we talk of optimization, optimization will work towards two ways to solve. First, optimization should get a single solution. So they can start working on a single solution, find whether it's good or not. If not, it should be either rejected or refined, or it should be finally improved to become a better solution. For example, if I say, I want to find out roots of an equation, I guess some answer. And if the answer is incorrect, I would like to improve or refine the guess and keep on improving. That becomes a single solution based optimization, hit and trial method. Other method comes, take a population of candidate solutions. Few tens of solutions, 30, 40, 50, 100, 200,000 solutions are taken. All of them will be evaluated. So it's a population of those solutions, population of chromosomes in case of a GA, population of particles in case of a PSO, population of various bees in case of a ABC, population of crows in case of a CSA, and various swarm intelligence like that. And then find out which of them are good, and then have with them some kind of a mutation, some kind of adjustment. They will be genetically modifying themselves using the concept of genetic algorithms, where always some kind of a mutation takes place, some kind of a crossbreeding takes place. So those concepts are applied, and those who work with GA, they can probably apply these things in a better manner. On the other side, when we talk of a machine learning, it is slightly different than the soft computing of AI or with the fuzzy logic, neural networks, and evolutionary computing. Machine learning effectively says you learn from past experiences, and your target is to improve, to learn and go for better and better intelligence based on the data. The biggest difference being, here we talk of automating the automation. No algorithm exists. Till now, what we said was that programming effectively used to have through an algorithm. But now we mean computer should design or develop the algorithm of its own. Computer works on a von Neumann architecture, where we say we specify the steps and computer works. Machine learning says use computer without specifying the steps of the algorithm, steps of the logic, and let the logic be developed by the computer. Effectively, it says let the data do the whole work. So we are highly dependent on the data in a big manner, and we don't use any mathematical or any kind of a modeling or any algorithm. Machine learning effectively is a kind of a domain where we are going to learn from the data or past experience. But machine learning is not a solution for everything. If I want to calculate payroll or if I want to calculate factorial, there is no need of learning, no machine learning needed. Standard algorithms will work better and they will work faster as well. Learning is needed when we want human expertise don't exist. We want to navigate on Mars and we have no data available and we have no past experience available. So we would like to collect some info and explore that in some manner. We are not able to explain the process. Like sometimes I say that by just listening to somebody on telephone, I could recall that this is the person who is my friend of 20 years old. And I have not seen or talked to him, but just by fraction of seconds speech recognition, I could find who this person is. And if somebody asks, how did you find? I'll say via his speech. But I say how? Then a human being has no answer. What kind of a processing was done that in fractions of second, I was able to find that this is so and so friend. Solution changes with the time. Dynamic routing taking place, things are changing dynamically, the traffic changing. Google Map adapts itself. The traffic behavior changing, peak hours changing, some jams happening, some red lights, some blockade, sometimes accidents, some road getting closer. Google Map tells that the road is closed, follow an alternate route. All that happening in real time. That's what is there. Solution needs to be adapted to the particular situation, like biometrics. I have various finger biometric, I have retina biometric, and they need to adjust out of millions and billions of the data. I need to adjust all that because there'll be not exact match, but I have to have approximate match. So machine learning is very useful where all these things are done. Like I say, in case of a traditional programming, the algorithm, the program was needed. I supply the input as a data and the output got generated. With machine learning, the data is supplied, the output is specified, and the program gets internally generated and processed. With machine learning, I just train my machine using the inputs and outputs, supervised or unsupervised learning, but ultimately the logic and algorithm gets automatically defined and the solution comes. With machine learning, primarily we look at 4 different aspects of the problem, and 4 different aspects are categorized as classification, which is a supervised learning for the discrete domain; unsupervised learning, where the clustering is another most commonly used direction where a lot of research is going on; regression analysis in the continuous domain for the supervisor category; and dimensionality reduction is another problem where unsupervised category with the continuous domain is explored. All these are some of the excellent research areas, and those who want to explore or work using this, they must know the difference between these and then learn the basic philosophical issues behind these. A fantastic story of the machine learning. I just talked a lot. Google Maps effectively started in 2005. At that time, it was into a trivial stage. Lot of map information from satellite images were captured. Lot of weather data, traffic data was captured. But initially for few 7-10 years, it was more of a data capturing. Initial few years, a lot of data generation and learning. And then slowly it started giving results. 10 years back, if you ask somebody, did you use a Google map? Very few users and very inaccurate results. Now you ask anybody who has not used Google map, very few will be that. Most of the people go to cities like Delhi and Bombay having no idea about the various routes. Still Google map takes them to the right position. But now the machine learning taking care of all your travel time, your working day, holiday, driving, your speed, road condition, traffics, red lights, your habits, your stoppages, all that taking place and still giving you precise results. Sometimes it will tell you that you will reach in 3 hours and 30 minutes and you will be wondering that how did it come to know, and you will reach exactly in 3 hours 29 minutes or maybe 3 hours 31 minutes. That's the precision Google Map has achieved now. Ultimately, how does it all happen? Just certain graph algorithms where lot of Dijkstra algorithm, A star, and graph hierarchies were used. Bidirectional algorithms as old as 1959, 1968, and 1990s were considered. They are traditional graph algorithms. Subsequently, there are a lot of landmarks and Goldbergs and genetic and other technical issues combined, which have been recently proposed into the AI-based algorithms in early 2000s. Slowly came the highway-related information and extraction of the data in the 2008 and so, and all these combinedly have been integrated to find out some of the best possible intelligent Google Map algorithms. And day per day, they are improving. And every time, sometimes you will find a better improvement. And within years, probably you'll find that this is one of the best and fantastic algorithm to be wondered. Machine learning is a buzzword. Everyone wants to use it without actually feeling why should we use it. So it's not that we should always use machine learning in every situation. We should be using machine learning by knowing its applicability. Like a payroll may not be the best solution for or machine learning may not be the solution for trivial applications like that. Similarly, if I want the result preparation in a university admission system, I don't need any ML there. If I need ML, the data availability is must. Machine learning can be made effective if you have specific characteristics known, choosing the proper model, and then integrating all these to get a better solution. So don't use machine learning as a black box. You have to choose the proper algorithm and proper characteristics. So you should know whether you want to use AI, whether you want to use fuzzy logic, whether you want to use neural networks, whether you want to use machine learning, whether you want to use swarm intelligence. Accordingly, your background must be prepared. Then there are certain applications which we can talk slightly for those who want to work in the area of a CSC and IT, where machine learning can be used to find out object-oriented classes of C++, Java, which are defective. Machine learning can be useful. Identify the critical components of the software which are more fault-prone, which are more change-prone, so that they can be given more attention. A lot of test cases are used. All of you are well aware that any software developed requires many test cases to be checked. Checking all test cases takes a lot of time. That much time may not be available. Hence, a test case prioritization could be one of the fantastic way to handle these things using machine learning. So those who want to carry out their research in the similar domains, they can get some idea how to use machine learning in which of the possible domains. Anywhere you want to do prioritization, machine learning can be useful. Anywhere you want to find critical component, maybe in a control system, maybe in a software, maybe in a hardware, maybe in an automobile system, maybe in a mechanical system, machine learning can be useful. Reusable components in a software is nowadays one of the biggest area where reusability is being promoted. Components should not be redefined or recreated every time. Reuse the previous well-defined components, and ML can play a good role there. Restructure the software, re-architecture, remodularize so that the quality improves. Overall software becomes better maintainable, better quality, good testable, good readable software. Modularization and remodularization can be solved using machine learning. And there are many more. Those who want to work in this area, they can explore it further. All these effectively are kind of a clustering problems, and clustering is effectively an optimization problem. In all these situations, what we are targeting is that we should make cluster of critical components, a cluster of high prioritized test cases. Reusable components should become one cluster. Not reusable should become a different cluster. Components which are not defective should go to a different cluster. Components which are defective should go to another cluster. Clustering ultimately is machine learning solution, but requires optimizational logic as well. So coming to the third part of our discussion of today's talk, we'll talk of the corresponding clustering via optimization. For example, in this case, if I say I have a software, ultimately software has a small components. Ultimately, all components need to be coupled together and cohesive together. Whenever I have a software, we treat it as a graph. Those who work in area of electronics, maybe networks, they can treat network nodes, and various nodes can be grouped together to become one class, one cluster. In all those who work in the area of electrical engineering, energy computing, grid computing, they can also consider various clusters. Those who work in the area of e-commerce, those who work in the area of data processing, the connected data is called a cohesive data, and that should become in a single cluster. Non-cohesive data should be separated, and that should go to a different cluster. So for the clustering, effectively, the thumb rule is a simple: high cohesion and low coupling. The way of cohesion could be different. Way of a coupling measurement could be different. In electrical engineering, it may be defined in a different manner. In communication engineering could be different. In VLSI, it could be different. But ultimately, all of these treat mathematically such things as a graph, and in the graph, high cohesion within the cluster and low coupling outside the cluster will be needed. And using this, our target will be to group together those components which are cohesive in nature. So clustering says, try to find out all such permutations and combinations and evaluate which of them are better solved, and then try to improve those by moving some of the objects or points from one cluster to the other. So cluster effectively means all points, all nodes to be shifted or relocated to various clusters, and then finding whether cluster is better now than the previous cluster or not. No supervised learning needed. Simply comparing the previous with the new results, I can find out whether it's a better or not. Mathematically, it is an NP-hard problem, but through intelligence, through clustering optimization, it can be solved in good time in an approximate manner. So optimization effectively is in two ways taken. One we call as a continuous optimization, another we call as a combinatorial. Continuous optimization effectively meaning that the domain, the search space is continuous. All data is going to be like fractional values, where in between of two fractional values, another fractional value might exist. On the other hand, combinatorial means we have some discrete problems where predefined points are there and permutation of those points become various search space solutions. So in this case of a combinatorial, effectively the solution vector is a discrete with a finite set of feasible solutions, and continuous. In between of every two fractional points, there is another fractional point possible, means the values are infinite and there are going to be within that dimension enormous or not countable number of solutions possible, and we would like to get the best solution or near best solution. We have two kind of optimizational problems which we solve normally. One we call as a single objective and other we call as multi-objective. Single objective, as the word subject suggests, we will be targeting to minimize or maximize one objective. For example, if I say I want to travel from one place to other and I want to minimize the time of travel, single objective. Multi-objective means I want to minimize or maximize multiple things. For example, if I say that I should take minimum time also, and I should spend minimum petrol also, and my distance also should remain minimum. Might not be possible because sometimes the smallest route might have more bottlenecks, more deadlocks, more traffic congestion. Hence, my smallest distance might not be fastest route. But if I want to say that I want to solve problems where I want to maximize the profit, minimize the cost, and if they both are not achievable parallelly easily, then they are considered as a multi-objective problem. If the both mean the same thing, then they are not multi-objective, they will come under single objective. But if they are conflicting objectives in nature, then they are considered as multi-objective problems. So as I said, the single objective effectively mean we want to minimize or maximize something where certain constraints are there. Single objective will have one minimization or maximization function with certain conditions on the data constraints being there. On the other hand, here we will be just talking of search space to be totally ordered. Again, those who don't work in the optimization area, for them these could be new words, but you can easily learn if you start working in this side. Totally ordered search space means I can tell which solution is better than others. There is no conflict, there is no ambiguity. I say one value is A1, another value is A2. I can say A2 is better than A1 guaranteedly or vice versa. So in this case, one best solution will be possible, and I would like to go for finding that solution. On the other hand, on this side, if I have to show it graphically, minimization, for example, to be targeted, I say this solution is not minimizing. So I'll say slowly I should get more minimum value of my objective function, more minimum. Slowly the minimum value will become almost constant or stable. And that will be the time when I'll say with the generation, I got some minimized solution. Obviously, the solution has no conflict, so I can easily find whether a solution, this solution is better than this or not, this solution better than this or not. Multi-objective will have more problems. Multi-objective says I want to minimize or maximize multiple objectives. So I have capital M different objectives, F1, F2, and so to be minimized or maximized with certain conditions. And my solution will be a collection of X1 to Xn various values, where X1, X2, and so, all these are the set of possible solutions, and we can find out objective function to be minimized for some of these or maximized for some of these. But they will be conflicting in nature, and hence there will be more problem. In this case, no single best solution will exist. For example, there could be one solution which optimizes or maximizes the profit, but profit is maximized. Maybe it requires more financial resources also. On the other hand, there could be some solutions which can be attempted by minimum finances. Say I want to put a factory. One solution says that you need 10 lakh rupees to be given or 10 lakh rupees to be first funded, and then you will be able to make profit of 1 lakh per month. Other solution could exist that you can make a profit of 5,000 per month and you need to invest 23,000 or 25,000. So I can't say which solution is better. There is going to be multiple solutions, and all solutions are called as Pareto optimal solutions. Search space will add complexity, and we could say some solution might be having maximum profit, but the cost is also high. Some solution might have the minimum cost, but profit could be lesser. Which of these is best? It will depend on problem to problem. The person who can't afford financial resources up to more than a limit, for him or her, maybe I'll say lesser cost with lesser profit could be good solution. For the persons like industrialists, they might say 10 lakh rupees is not an amount for me. For them, more profit with more financial requirements could be a better solution. So these things are called as multi-objective. Multi-objective, they again can be solved in two ways. One is going to be non-evolutionary and other is going to be evolutionary. Non-evolutionary, as we already know, some deterministic algos also could exist. Some mathematical formulation graph-based algos can exist. And evolutionary mean we have a population-based as well as non-population-based. Population-based are quite common, like a genetic algorithms, the PSO, Crow search, and many more like that, where we try to find things like global convergence. Again, those who work in this area, they might be knowing this word. Otherwise, you can read about this and learn more, where the population will be generated and genetic operators will be applied, where crossover and mutation operators will be used to find their fitness. So better fit chromosomes will survive, lesser fit will be regarded, and new population or new chromosomes will be generated if we talk in terms of genetic algo. Similar will be when we talk of a PSO, we talk of ABC, ACO, Big Bang, Big Crunch, BBBC, etc., etc. Multi-objective effectively is more common nowadays from research viewpoint. Those who want to use evolutionary algorithms for optimization, multi-objective has a greater scope of publications. Many of you will be able to publish it in a faster manner if you solve it using multi-objective evolutionary algorithms. For that, effectively, primarily, the general steps will be generate certain initial population, till you don't get the best solution or near best, keep on doing some selection, crossover, mutation, and keep on improving the result and finding optimization. Coming towards the final discussions of my talk, and then we may have some questions for another 10-15 minutes. The optimization application in various electronics and computer science and engineering or IT domain can be in the area of networks, computer vision, VLSI, communication system. In networks, for example, I want to have routing protocols, I want to have congestion control, I want to have energy efficiency, I want to have the corresponding flow control. You can have a lot of optimization. Computer vision, image segmentation, image classification, identifying the objects, and many more things like that is a basic, possibly computer optimization for vision area. VLSI design, say I want to minimize the heat dissipation, I want to minimize the signal transfer control or signal traffic, or I want to have the clustering done for minimum space needed for VLSI. Communication systems, I want the fastest possible communication with least noise, with the least disturbances, no cross connections, and all those things where I have some kind of the corresponding clusters being made for finding out where the antennas should be put, where the new tower should be installed, and all those things can be identified through optimization. Distributed processing, signal processing, they have a lot of various ways. In all these techniques, effectively, either the time needs to be minimized, cost needs to be minimized, delays needs to be minimized, distance needs to be minimized, heat need to be minimized, or maximize efficiency or throughput or profit or energy, etc. So these can be a single objective or multi-objective problems. As per the requirements, they can be accordingly modeled and then solved using various optimizational or machine learning algorithms. Coming to the final discussions, dear friends, the future is going to see exceptionally intelligent machines. There is no doubt about that. Future is going to be like that. The data by which it is growing is unprecedented, and obviously it is impossible to process them with the reasonable computing resources. Hence, what we are going to see is imprecision, and such big data handling requires near optimal solutions instead of the optimal solution. And if I want one of the approximate reasoning to be done, then machine learning, soft computing, optimization are some of the possible solutions and answers to such directions of the research as well as applicational problems. And if you want to apply these, the first and foremost requirement is the domain knowledge you have to acquire, and the suitability as well as applicability of those techniques to your domain must be ensured. Don't think that anything and everything is solvable using one model, using one algo, using one approach, using one technique. No, you have to find out, and you should use the domain characteristics for improving the solutions. Thank you very much. Thanks a lot for the patient hearing. If there are any questions, you are welcome to ask. Any questions?
Thank you, sir. Sir, there is a question from the participants. Dr. Narendra, how can we choose a classifier based on a training set data size?
Okay. Yeah, effectively, first thing is there cannot be a thumb rule. Yeah, Dr. Narendra. Normally, there is no well-defined rule that just a data size will decide the classifier. More than data, so sometimes there are some indicators that for smaller data size, those classifiers which work reasonably for lesser data could be chosen. But again, that may not be the best solution. A better way of doing this will be that you should explore the characteristics of the data and data characteristics can tell whether that fits into the corresponding classifier or not. Dr. Prashant has given another solution that logistic regression is one good technique, or he asked that. Okay, first I'll complete the Dr. Narendra's part. So data characteristics, if the data characteristic, for example, if I take a classifier which primarily works with the dimensionality reduction used inside, then you should have the data where multidimensional data exists. If you are using a classifier where certain characteristics in the data range are needed and your data doesn't have that, then the data size will not be material. Your data is not fit for that. So that is the basic issue, that choose an algorithm, not just because some literature says the characteristics of your problem versus working nature of that classifier should be matched with each other. Prashant says logistic regression is good technique. Yes,
thank you, sir. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Narendra sir. If you are having any more queries, feel free. In the meantime, I'll answer the Dr. Prashant's question. Well, logistic regression is reasonable technique, but we can't say that it is a good technique in all situations. Like if you talk some of the defect detection problems in software engineering, logistic regression might not give good results, because in that case, some kind of hierarchical classification or hierarchical arrangement of a decision tree is more useful, because a certain prioritized criteria are more relevant. In logistic regression, the hierarchical nature of the relevance among features doesn't come into picture. So only statistics, only regression might not be the solution.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Welcome, Prashant ji. So yeah, any more queries? We are welcome.
Yes, participants, any other query? Students, if you have any query? I think no other query.
Yeah, I think there is no more queries. I'm not sure whether no queries mean nothing understood or no query means everything understood, but they know better.
Okay, Dr. Chabra, thank you very much. Session was really very wonderful. You have explored so many things in one session, and I hope it will be useful for the participants who are working into this area, who are working into soft computing, who are working into software engineering. You have explained very well how machine learning can be used in software engineering. It was really a very nice session. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. In the meantime, I think there is one question I can answer that. Tania has asked, what is dimensionality reduction? So Tania, dimensionality reduction means, like if I have a data where I have a lot of features and some of the features could be less relevant or not needed because other features are able to reflect the same knowledge into that. So dimensionality reduction means out of n dimensions, reducing the data to lesser than n dimensions. That is what dimensionality reduction means. So Santa, she says, or they are asking for your some feedback kind of a link, or probably Savita wrote that. Savita Vadhavan, I think I know her personally. Thank you, Savita. Sumit, thank you. Thanks all participants for your appreciation. Informative section, Dr. Narendra says, and thank you very much. Any other issues? Okay. Tanya says, how to remove biasness? Well, for biasness removing, effectively, you have to go into the mathematics of that particular model, and then you need to apply that some way by giving some kind of awards or penalties. Like if you say reinforcement learning, so reinforcement learning is very useful for removing the biasness, and through that you can put the awards and penalties for that. Rajendra says, how can we use dimensionality reduction in case of a CNN for imaging? I'm not very sure whether in case of image processing, in case of a CNN, whether dimensionality reduction will be really worth or fruitful or not. probably you can look at the literature and find some good journal papers. If they have explored dimensionality reduction suitability for imaging, that may be because in images, instead of a dimensionality reduction, more useful will be ROC kind of a thing, finding the useful area of the area under the curve AOUC of that, so that you can find the reason of interest. And once you find ROI, from there, image classification or image segmentation will be useful. Dimensionality reduction, whether useful or not, research papers need to be explored for that. Yeah, thank you, Rajendra ji. Yeah, any more queries if there are? So we can take.
Any other query, participants?
Thank you. So thank you all participants. Thanks for the interest you are shown by the participants. I think we can close then, and thank you all. Thank you to thank you all. Let me give to all my thanks. So I think with this, we can wind up, Kiranji.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much, sir.
So thank you.
Really, very good session.
Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you very much. Wishing all of you best of luck and stay healthy, stay safe.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Narendra ji. So Shubha Lakshmi is asking for feedback link. I think that Dr. Kiran
we are sharing it. Just wait for 1 minute. Okay. Participants, kindly don't go. We are going to have a group photo. Sir, it will be nice if you will be here for our group photo.
Okay, okay, sure.
All the participants, kindly switch on your camera. All the participants, kindly switch on your camera.
Participants, kindly switch on only the camera. Don't unmute.
Pankaj sir, camera switch on karo. We will have to take four photographs. Abhishek Purohit, Prabhasharan, if you can switch on your cameras. It will be nice if all of us will switch on our camera. Gomti, Jaspreet, are you there? No, screen 3's photograph of screen 3 is taken. Kindly switch on your cameras. Gomti, Sparsh, Ashwini. Thank you very much, Dinda sir.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Thank you very much. Thank you all. Thank you. Thanks to the participants. Thanks to the organizer. Thank you.
Okay, sir. Participants, there is an announcement for you. In the morning, around 98 participants registered for the first session, for the second session also. But in the third session, the number is reduced to 94. So it is requested to everybody that kindly attend all the sessions. It is a strict instruction from AICTE, being an online mode. We are not taking your attendance. Your attendance is automatically taken from the server. The participants who are logged in, log is generated for every participant. So kindly be online for every session. So the participants who have registered today, who have joined all the 3 sessions today, they will be considered for rest of the days. The participants who have registered for Zoom, but they have not attended to this session, they will not be considered for any of the sessions. So it is requested to everybody, kindly join all the sessions. Tomorrow's sessions will be taken. Morning session will be on it will be on the mathematical concepts which will be used for your machine learning. It will be given by Dr. Sandeep from IIT Roorkee. It will start sharp at 9:30. So kindly be on time. And after that, there will be 2 sessions taken by Dr. Sarabjit Singh from UIAT Chandigarh. And Dr. Sarabjit Singh will be taking hands-on sessions. His first session will be on the clustering techniques, and a second session will be on the classification techniques in machine learning. So these, all the 3 sessions are very important for tomorrow's day. So kindly all of you, please be present. If you are not present on the first session, you won't be able to understand the concept on the second and third session. So thank you very much for the today's sessions. We are sharing the feedback in WhatsApp group as well as in this chat group. Kindly fill the feedback form, give your honest feedbacks so that we can improve. If there is some shortcoming in today's sessions, we can improve it tomorrow. So if any participant is having any query, they can ask. Otherwise, we are going to wind up for today. Any query from the participant side? Feedback form is shared by Dr. Sandeep Singla. PPTs will be shared, and by the evening, there is a YouTube channel of Guru Nanak Dev Engineering College. So we will be uploading all the recordings of all sessions in that YouTube channel. Kindly subscribe to that channel, and you will be able to see all the recordings. We will be uploading the recording within an hour to that YouTube channel, and link will be shared in WhatsApp group for both for the students and for the participants. Kindly subscribe to that channel. You will be able to see all the recordings of all the sessions of STTP. Right? Thank you very much. If you do not have any query, kindly be on time tomorrow. Session will start sharp at 9:30. Feedback form will be open till 6 o'clock today. So fill up your feedback form by 6 o'clock. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.